Everybody needs to calm down when it comes to the Nets. I don't know why people are surprised by this outcome. Sure, it's fantastic when the big bully kid in the kickball game runs up to kick the ball and completely whiffs and falls on his back and makes a mockery of himself, and everybody in the middle school points at him and laughs. Totally not speaking from experience here. No, seriously, I'm not. But still, the point being, it's always great to see when the big villain runs up to take a kick at the kickball and takes a gigantic swing or a gigantic kick and flat out misses and throws himself on his back. But instead of taking a look at that and saying, ha ha, that guy missed the ball, you say, well, I'm the type of person that says, well, that's not so surprising, because if you took a look at his form, he really has really poor form, despite the fact that he's got a powerful leg. So it's not really a surprise to me that his poor form allowed him to run up and his poor form allowed him to miss the ball. And that's the same way that I am approaching this loss that people are, I feel like, overreacting to. Everybody's taking a look and saying, haha, you lost to the Cavaliers. They're the worst offensive team in the NBA. Like, this is the big three. This is everything that we're supposed to be scared about. And I'm sitting here saying, well, I'm not surprised by any of this. I mean, this team is exactly what we thought it was going to be going in. It's a team that is going to be potentially historically great offensively and potentially historically bad defensively. And that's exactly what we saw on Wednesday night when it came to the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Brooklyn Nets. It is exactly what we saw. The Cavs beating the Nets by a score of 147 to 135. Colin Sexton had the best game of his career by far. 42 points, 5 assists, 5 rebounds, 1 steal. The Cavs won without Kevin Love or Darius Garland, and Sexton was coming back after a 5-game absence. And again, the Cavs, depending on what metric you look at, either have the second worst offense in the NBA or the worst offense in the NBA. And the Brooklyn Nets, the big three, Durant, Harden, Kyrie. This was Kyrie's first game back, which is why this is getting so much media attention. This is the first time that this newly formed big three have played on the same court together, on the same team at the same time. So I can understand the media attention around it, and I can definitely understand why everybody wants to point and laugh at the new big villain in the NBA. But again, I'm sitting here saying I am not surprised by any of this. Again, potential to be historically great offensively, also the potential to be historically bad defensively. And the big three combined for 96 points. All of them played 45 minutes or more, which, if there's anything that I'm actually surprised and or concerned about coming off of last night, and this was a great point that I think Zach Lowe made, and it's the fact that Kevin Durant is playing so many minutes. In fact, all of them are playing so many minutes. Especially with the NBA really having a new, I don't necessarily want to call it trend, but load management is definitely a trendy phrase, a catchphrase, a phrasing that you've heard a lot around the NBA over the last 2 seasons. And I think it's still very much evident and is still very much in play, especially with COVID and what this NBA season is. So I'm a little worried that Kevin Durant, James Harden, and Kyrie Irving are playing so many minutes. Granted, yes, it was a double overtime game, but even still, Kevin Durant is coming off an Achilles tear, and he's playing 50 minutes. And with the lack of depth that they have on the bench, now that they sold away their entire souls to get James Harden, again, I used the phrase during the time of the trade, they sold the basement to get the attic. They have no depth, really. I mean, Joe Harris played, I believe, 35 to 40 minutes as well, and that's going to be their quote-unquote sixth man. But other than that, nobody else really played. I am seriously concerned that by the end of the season, that these three are going to play so much that they are just absolutely exhausted and worn out. Not to mention if any of them get COVID. Not to mention if any of them are physically unprepared to play. Kyrie Irving was off for 7 games. He looked great. He played great, but still the conditioning might not be at its peak. Same with James Harden. I think there's all these pictures about quote-unquote fat James Harden floating around, but he's looked fine as well. But still, my point remains, the only thing that I would be concerned about and that I was surprised about is that these guys played so much. And if they continue to have to play so much to win games like this, then that could be an issue just by the stance that once they get to the important games, the playoffs games, they're going to have no energy and they're going to have an earlier exit. But in terms of what everybody is talking about, again, the grand scheme of things, the fact that this team with three of the best scorers in the NBA, two All-Stars, or two MVPs, three All-Stars on the team, there's really two camps with this. You're either saying, wow, it took Sexton's best game as a pro for the Cavs to beat the Nets, or you're saying, wow, the Nets' big three dropped 96 points combined and still lost to the worst offense in the NBA without Darius Garland and Kevin Love. And I think most people are trending on that side of things. That's the camp with the most people in it. And again, I understand it. It's taking a look at the big bully that in middle school that just whiffed kicking a kickball at recess and saying, ha ha, you guys just whiffed so bad. But again, you should not be surprised in what you saw. The product that the Brooklyn Nets are advertising is exactly what we saw on Wednesday night. And yes, it's going to result in this team that a casual fan will look at and say they should not lose any games, and it's going to result in this team losing games against teams that they should not lose to. And that is especially not unheard of in the first opening weeks of a Big Three. Happened with the Celtics, happened with LeBron in Miami, happened with the Warriors with Kevin Durant in Oakland. It happens all the time. This team needs time to get everything going together. They probably will figure out something a little bit to try and get better on defense, but that still doesn't change the fact that we actually got a lot of what we were advertised last night with the Brooklyn Nets. Potentially historically great offense, also potentially historically bad defense. Nobody should be surprised about what happened. Again, the only reason that you should be surprised or concerned is the fact that Kevin Durant, James Harden, and Kyrie had to play so much in order to beat these teams, or in order to beat the Cavs. And if that issue persists, I am very worried not only about the health of Kevin Durant coming off an Achilles tear. I'm not only worried about that, but I'm also worried about the word is escaping me. The word that's in my mind right now is density, and I know that's not the right word, but the ability to stay healthy. That is going to be the most important for the Brooklyn Nets, especially if these guys are going to be playing so much. The next game for the Brooklyn Nets is actually tonight against the Cavs as well, so it's going to be really interesting to see how we frame what happened Wednesday with what we frame tonight and what happens tonight. It's going to be interesting to see if more of the same happens, or if maybe the Nets play a little bit better defense and they end up being better than we thought they are going to be when it comes to the defense side of the ball. But again, I'm not surprised. It's exactly what we thought it was going to be. It really depends on if the Nets are able to get better defensively, because otherwise they are going to be really, really good. They are going to drop a bunch of points on your head, but they're also going to lose games that they shouldn't lose just because of the fact that they cannot play any defense. I mean, their best defender is DeAndre Jordan, and he only played 24 minutes last night, and he's only really a good defender inside of the paint, which again, in this NBA is not as valued just because of the value of the three-point shot, the value of perimeter shooting. The Nets have no on-ball defense. They traded away probably their best on-ball perimeter defender in Taurean Prince, who plays for the Cavs now, who beat them on Wednesday night. So, again, I'm not surprised. Did anybody really expect anything different? Everybody should have known that this team was going to be really bad defensively. I'm not surprised. You shouldn't be either. Again, this is not me trying to dimmer expectations for the Nets. They are still title favorites. They should be title favorites. But if you take a look at what we saw from night one, and again, I'm in the camp of saying you should not take what you saw in night one and just slap it over, well, this is what's going to happen against everybody. No, it's night one of a newly formed Big Three. Give them time to get it together. But again, this is exactly what's advertised by the Brooklyn Nets. They're going to score a lot of points, but their defense against teams that have especially big post scorers like the Lakers with LeBron and Anthony Davis, that is what's going to be the thing that will prevent them from winning a title, if anything prevents them from winning a title. Again, I feel like I'm repeating myself at this point, so we're going to cut it off here. Not surprised about what happened. Historically great offense, historically bad defense. only concerned about the playing time that Kevin Durant, Harden, and Kyrie are going to have in order to make this super team work. Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching this segment from the Hard Headed Sports Podcast. You've heard what I've had to say, now I'm interested to hear what you think as well. If you enjoyed this highlight from the show and want to watch more highlights from the show as they come out after the show's completion, you should definitely subscribe to the YouTube channel, and if you're interested in listening to the entire show in its full-length entirety, you should follow the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Anchor. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you all very soon.